Family planning could be the cheapest method of tackling climate change. That's according to a UK-based charity which has been looking into cost-effective measures for controlling carbon emissions. The Optimum Population Trust is urging wealthy people to offset their own CO2 emissions by funding contraception programs. Well, we can talk now to the United Nations in New York, where we're going to talk to Jose Miguel Guzman. He's chief of the Population and Development Branch at the UN Population Fund, and also to Duncan Green. He's the head of research at Oxfam and joins us from central London. Thank you very much for being with us, both of you. Jose Miguel Guzman, to you first of all. This whole idea of population control to control climate change is quite potentially controversial.
Yes, no government of United Nations has mentioned never that population control is the way to solve climate change or any other problems. It's very clear that the position that the governments and United Nations have in this regard is to respect to the decision of couples and women in terms of the timing and the number of children they want to have.
But briefly, how much difference could it make if there was big cuts in population growth?
Well, I think the linkages between population and climate change is very complex, and it's not possible to provide any evidence on concrete effects, because it all depends on how we develop. It's not just about how many we are, but also in terms of what are our patterns of consumption and production. If we don't change our pattern of production and consumption lifestyles, an increase in population will have an effect in every society. Obviously, the effect will be higher in the societies with high level of consumption.
Duncan Green from Oxfam, just give us your view, I mean, on this idea of using population control to slow down climate change.
To be honest, I think it's a huge distraction. The problem of climate change is a problem of consumption, and the people who consume least are the people who have the largest families. So actually you're targeting completely the wrong place. If you look at where carbon emissions have been rising fastest in recent years, it's actually the countries with the smallest population growth. So I think we need to get the debate back to where it matters, which is what are rich people, what are wealthy people doing in the rich countries, or the rich people in poor countries, and not this red herring of population.
Well, you say red herring, but I mean the UN Population Fund saying if by 2050 the Earth's population stood at 8 billion rather than 9 billion, that would save between 1 and 2 gigatons of carbon a year. That's not inconsiderable, is it?
It's not inconsiderable. There's a number of very good reasons for actually providing family planning, for helping women choose to when and how many babies to have. But at the moment, we've got a massive summit meeting coming up in Copenhagen next week, and the main consumer countries, the countries that are actually putting the carbon into the atmosphere, have to start making tough decisions, not deferring everything and diverting everything onto a discussion of something completely other issue, such as population.
Jose Miguel Guzman, a distraction, that's Oxfam's view. What do you think of that?
Well, I think population matters for climate change, but not in the simplistic way that some people can put it. I think population issue is a relevant factor for adaptation measure. We cannot plan, we cannot adapt without knowing who will be affected. We have been talking a lot about what will be which will be the factors and the events, but not too much about who will be affected. And we think that putting the focus on people, putting the focus on the population that will be affected, and particularly the women and older persons and children, this is the way to deal with the adaptation. If we just think that climate change means technology or production, I think we are missing the most important part, how we put people in this equation.
Duncan Green, back to you. I mean, I suppose when people talk about population growth or control, they're often talking about control in the poorer countries, in the developing world. And those are, in a sense, often the countries contributing less to carbon emissions. I mean, for example, the United States is the biggest polluter in the world.
That's right. I mean, the average American produces 20 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. The average Kenyan produces less than 1 ton. So if you're looking to try and curb carbon emissions, it's pretty obvious where you have to look. However, I do think it's very important that we, the point that Jose Miguel raised, that at the moment it's the poorest countries who are suffering the worst effects of climate change, but that's a different debate from the population debate. Again, we need to actually look at what the main problem is and deal with it.
And very briefly, Duncan, do you think